Hey church, hope you're doing well. Great to have you with us tonight for another Cultivate Conversation. Just an opportunity we have to listen into the life and leadership journey of some great church leaders and friends from around the country. And this evening, I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce you to Jon and Louise Jarvis. Jon and Louise are dear friends of Naomi and I, and have been involved in church leadership at different levels for many years, are currently serving as the pastors of One Church in Gloucester. And tonight, if you are believing for a breakthrough, if you're holding on for a miracle, I would really encourage you just to stay tuned as you listen to some of what God has done in and through their lives this evening. I'd encourage you right now to hit the share button on Facebook. I really believe this conversation will help many people, and let's share it, let's get people watching, and let's welcome Pastors Jon and Louise Jarvis from One Church in Gloucester. Well, Jon and Louise, thank you so much for joining us for tonight's episode of Cultivate Conversations. Great to have you with us. We've obviously been friends a long time. I think about 15, 16 years now. We met in that bowling alley in Portsmouth when you were there with your youth group Audacious, and we were there with ours. And obviously you're brilliant friends of ours, have been for many years. But you're relatively new to our church. Jon, you were here visiting last year, I think, March, April time, was that right?
It feels like ages ago. You know when people used to be in buildings, like people in buildings that were churches? That was amazing.
That would have been like February. I think it was February time.
Those people have long forgotten, but hopefully have a desire to rediscover at some point soon. But so tell us a bit about who you are, for those who don't know you. So you are from what I call the natural beauty spot of London, Dagenham, both of you. But tell us about your background, where you're from, family, early years, both of you individually.
It's true. We're from the motherland of Dagenham, which just sits on the border between Essex and London. We're both from Dagenham, born and bred. And we grew up literally 30 doors away from each other, on just almost on the same street. And we met really early on.
We did.
Due to some, your neighbours were the youth pastors at the church that my parents were pastoring back in the day. But having said that, so we'd met a little bit when we were younger, but it was a number of years before we got to know each other properly. And despite growing up almost next door,
never saw each other.
No. But I grew up in church, so I grew up in the church in Dagenham. Like I said, my parents were the pastors there, and that was my home church. That was back in the day when there was something on every day at church, and you had to be at everything. Otherwise, you didn't count as a Christian. And so that was like proper pastor's kid life for me. But you didn't go to the church, so that's why we didn't really know.
I didn't go to that church. I was brought up a Roman Catholic, so I went to the Catholic church, and I was just trying to think about it because it's quite a long story for me. But really, like, I had a really good foundation knowledge of Jesus, but it wasn't a heart thing, it was just a head thing. So I sort of went through the motions in church, and then when I was like 14, I kind of left and rebelled a bit, went quite stupendously off the rails. My dad was an alcoholic, and life was just a little bit crazy for me, and then ended up in bad relationships, in a relationship of abuse and control. But that ultimately,
it needs to be said that what you fit in between 15 and 18 as part of your testimony,
it's quite impressive.
It's usually that's like a decade or two for most people. So you'd really kind of
crammed it all in.
You did a lot by the time you got to 18.
I did well. So by the time I was 18, I opened my own business, my own beauty salon, and was doing that sort of thing, but was in this very toxic relationship with this guy who was twice my age. And so it's quite abusive, quite controlling, but ultimately that led me to God. He had a bit of I'm not really sure what he had, but he had some sort of founding in Christianity, had told me, you need to start going back to church, to which I then went through a cycle of going back to the Catholic church, not feeling anything, found an Anglican church, which was lovely and really got on well. Did a bit of a Christianity Explained course there. Knew in my heart that was where I wanted to be. But it was a very small church. There was no young people or anything like that. And then eventually found my way to Bethel, which was the church where Jon's parents were the pastors. They'd retired by this point, and now my next door neighbours were the pastors of the church.
Wow.
Gone from youth pastors to pastors. So and found myself there. Gave my life to Jesus and never looked back, really. Yeah, that was at 18.
So what age? So you were 18 when you gave yourself.
Yeah.
What about you, Jon? When did, obviously growing up in a Christian family, parents were pastors, when did you have that encounter moment with God for yourself?
Yeah, I think anyone that grows up in church should be able to put their finger on a number of different moments like that, and that's true for me as well.
Yeah.
I definitely remember being 5 years old, and bizarrely, or ironically or not, my dad was visiting Gloucester, where we are now, as the visiting speaker. His best friend was the pastor at the time here. Yeah. And I remember attending the service, my dad speaking, and the gospel appeal at the end says, anyone here want to give their life to Jesus? And returning to my mum and saying, I would like to do that. So my mum walks me to the front.
Say how old you were?
I was 5. Yeah, come and stand at the front, and if you want to respond, we'll pray for you. So I toddled down to the front with my mum. But the best part of the story is that the church used to do a lot of work with a prison outreach. So ex-offenders and some prisoners that were allowed for day release to go to church. So the story goes that the image of 12 or 13 prison mates standing at the front, and then 5-year-old me at the end.
Right in, Jon, I can believe that.
Yeah, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Yet there's me and the guy next to me. We were one for that moment. So I do remember that, and then a number of moments that really helped shape me and form me, including, and if you're a parent here and you have a kid that's growing up in church, that at some point, if you've made them go to church every week, at some point between 12 and 18, they're going to decide they don't want to do that. And that I had those times, and they were just as forming for me as it became about my faith. My dad being a minister and had held a role within Assemblies of God, that meant he was overseeing a whole bunch of churches in East Anglia as well, meant that it sort of felt everywhere I went, everybody knew who my dad was. And then my brother, I've got 2 older brothers. My oldest brother, some of the guys in Bedford will know, Simon. Yeah. He was a pastor, and for a period of time, he was the national youth director. So for this season, wherever I went, I was either Michael's son or Simon's brother. Yeah. And you're a teenager, and you're like, I am my own man. And I was like, whatever happens, I definitely don't want to be a pastor. That was absolutely decided. So when Louise and I met, when she came to church at 18, I'd gone through this whole cycle of, I definitely don't want to be a pastor. I'm definitely going to go into web design and software development, because I was a bit of a geek and enjoyed that stuff.
If only.
That's money, isn't
For the
it?
money.
Yeah, can you imagine?
What a life we would have had.
And I'd gone through that, and then I'd had this real encounter with God during my A-levels, where he'd gone, you've got a great plan, but you just haven't asked me about it. So when are we going to have the chat? And the result of that chat was I cancelled my UCAS applications. I'd got into a bunch of unis in London to study, and I cancelled all of those, took a gap year for my church, did schools work full-time voluntarily at my church for a year. And then during that time, God was like, okay, I know you definitely don't want to do this, but I do want you to be a pastor, and you're going to go into full-time ministry. So now we need a plan that's going to get you there. And the next part of that for me was, rather than Bible college or an internship somewhere, or just applying for jobs, I felt God really clearly speak to me, say, for most people that do this stuff, certainly people that are in church in different lay positions and volunteer leaders, they work full-time, they get home, they feed the kids, they woof some dinner down themselves if they're lucky, and then there'll be people watching this now, and that's you, and then you're out again for running a small group or a kids club or a youth club, or that's the real engine room of church life, for these volunteers. So he said, you need to go and know what that feels like. So I got a job in Jon Louise department stores, got on a management training scheme. Got on a management training scheme that then meant I got loads of good teaching, and we met then at church while I was doing that. For my ministry training was basically in retail.
Okay, so you meet. You're working at Jon Louise. You've just joined the church, Louise.
Yeah.
When did you set eyes on each other in a romantic way? Who was it? Love at first sight? Was that something that grew over time? What happened there?
I can't talk for Jon, but for me, it was definitely like a bit of a first sight thing. Yeah, we met.
Oh, good, because you started that sentence really cautiously.
Well, I didn't know how you felt. You know, I didn't want to. I've never really asked you about that.
Well, I think I was dating someone when we.
Jon was in a relationship.
This is going to be.
Technically, I was as well, because I was still with this older guy. So we were both technically in relationships still, but we met in the pastor's car. I was getting a lift to church, and she'd come to pick me up, and found this waif and stray.
I was between cars at the time. That's quite a lot in that stage of my life.
So yeah, she'd picked Jon up already, and I jumped into the car, and she was introduced. She's like, "Oh, this is my dad, Louise. You might remember him." I was like, "Oh, hello. Yeah, I do remember him from like birthday parties and stuff from back in the day." And she was like, "Oh, and this is Jonathan. You might remember Jonathan." And I looked and I thought, "Well, I don't really remember Jonathan, but I'd like to get to know him." And that was kind of like, yeah, I just knew. I knew I was going to end up marrying this guy. Yeah, funny.
And the feeling that feeling's mutual, you know? That's what you sensed at the time as well.
Yeah, it was complicated, wasn't it? Because I was already in a relationship of sorts, but obviously, whenever somebody stunningly beautiful arrives, you take notice, and we took our time in order to, we spent a lot of time getting to know each other, and that was important. You grow up with a lot of people when you grow up with a lot of people your age, there's lots of natural friendships. So we spent a lot of time investing into that, and then we started dating and got married in about 6
Yeah, I mean, I put the pressure on. I was like, look, if you're in this, then I want a ring. Do you know what I mean? Like, come on, let's just get engaged. And Jon, and I said, if otherwise we'll call it. Like, that's it. And Jon felt the pressure then, because there was a few other guys similar age that were interested. So he liked it. You put a ring on it. There you go.
How long were you dating before you got married?
We were dating a year before we got engaged. Got engaged on my 20th birthday, and then we got married 6 weeks before my 22nd birthday. So we were engaged nearly 2 years.
Okay.
Made me wait. Like, after an early engagement,
we
made me wait a while for the actual marriage.
Yeah.
Because
like when you pay a deposit on a holiday, like well early, just to make sure it's booked, and then you don't have to pay the full instalment until later.
Tell them why we had to wait until 2005 to get married.
Well, because we got engaged in 2003, and I didn't want our wedding to be one of those weddings where you're competing with a major international tournament. So who wants to have a wedding
competing with?
Well, it would have been the Euro 2004, or any even year was a no-go. Because I've been to weddings when England are playing, or when there's nobody wants to be at the wedding. Everybody wishes they were watching the game, or like a Champions League final. These are dates you have to avoid.
You were just thinking of the guests, Jon. It was nothing to do with where the groom wanted to be.
Yes.
Totally. All for the guests. Yeah. So 2005.
We were well young as well, and I think young. The thought of getting married.
I was 21. You were 23.
You were. Because you were basically lived an entire adult life, but by 19, and I hadn't, and I think it just took me longer to come around. And even at 23 and 21, that's super young, even more so now, isn't it?
And now when we see people
that was
that
15
are that
years
age,
ago.
Yeah, and when we see people that age getting married, we're like,
so young.
They're babies.
So young.
They're just little
Are you
babies.
sure you're ready?
Yeah. So married at 21 and 23, 2005. And talk us about, early years of marriage. So you were in Woodford at the time, when you got married, or were you still in Dagenham?
We were in Dagenham still. Yeah, we got married in Dagenham. Our wedding day was our last day in our church.
Okay. So then you went straight to Woodford to become youth pastors there.
Jon had been offered the job just before, probably about
6 months or so.
Yeah, 5 months before we got married, he got offered the job. So we knew that we were going straight into ministry. Yeah.
Yeah, it did the works, mate. We got married, moved churches, bought a flat, moved towns, started full-time ministry, all on the same day.
Yeah.
That all happened in that same, in the space of like those 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
We're straight into it. So I think then that meant, the good thing of that was that meant our married life was a whole new life, but it also, there was a whole new chapter as well. So everything we were doing was new, and we were doing that together. That was really good. I think though, obviously there's challenges that come with that as well, like adjusting from working full time for a retail organization and then into working full time for church, and the demand that puts on you. I obviously I had witnessed that firsthand of how busy my dad would always be and how often he was out, and never thought about that being out of balance. My dad would never have said that his life was out of balance. He always spoke so passionately about calling, and this is your life, and the joy it was to do that and throw everything into it, and all you need is your Bible and your toothbrush and a passport, and everything else will come. And they lived that way and saw the benefits of that. I got to see firsthand the benefits of just living a life totally dedicated to God and serving him through his church. What they hid from me were the challenges that come with that, and either which they must have had, because I'm not aware of any couple in ministry that haven't faced those challenges around balancing your time, creating space for one another, a routine that isn't based around a church program. There's stuff that you have a routine in your life, the guilt that comes when you feel like you're not doing enough for the people that when you look the people in the eye that are paying your bills week in, week out in a different way than you do when you're a customer in a shop. And I think we're probably not prepared for that. It's an amazing 3.5 years in Woodford.
It was.
We saw what we loved doing it. We saw some amazing young people that have become amazing grown-ups now. And the youth ministry itself, like, considering we'd never done it before full time.
And I'd only been a Christian 3 years.
So
that was like baptism of fire for me. I just went straight into it, and trying to find my feet and my place was difficult as well. John had grown up in it. He knew what all this stuff was and how it worked, and for me it was like a whole new experience of trying to figure that out for myself.
So like 1.5 years into
and run
that,
a business,
and probably similar time we met you guys, taking a whole group to Audacious conference. Just less than 1.5 years into it, we'd gone from about 16 young people to over 100 on a Friday night, and all the stuff that spins off that to do with discipleship and building teams and all that kind of stuff. And it was a pretty insane, brilliant, exhausting marriage testing time that we loved.
Definitely.
But took a few hits.
Fantastic. So you were there 3.5 years in Woodford, built a fantastic youth ministry, as you said, grew some great young people that became great adults and great leaders that are now youth pastors and ministers themselves. Did a phenomenal job there in a short space of time. What was the catalyst for moving to Gloucester then? So from Woodford to Gloucester, so that would have been what, 2008? Am I thinking 2008?
We moved here 1st of January 2009.
Okay, so what were the series of events that led to you making that decision, that call to move on?
Simon just didn't give up. He just pestered us, just kept asking.
He did. So Si and Ali and the kids had moved here in 2007. And in a genuine coincidence, my parents had moved here as well. They'd retired from ministry, were looking for somewhere to live that wasn't Dagenham, because when you retire, you don't need to live in Dagenham.
Who would?
They were looking
around. Called to Dagenham.
Exactly. And they, like I said earlier, their best friends lived here. They're a few years older than my parents, and they thought, well, we can have a couple of years just hanging out with our friends, and as they get a bit more infirm, I think they saw that we would like to be there for them,
to look after them. Yeah.
So that my parents and Si and Ali and their kids had moved in 2007. The church had really took off since Si took over, and had really made a whole heap of changes. Pretty much turned the church from a struggling Pentecostal church that kind of got a bit stuck. On their fault. The pastor, who's my dad's friend, had got seriously ill, and the church had hoped he would get better, didn't though, ultimately, and then retired before passing away.
They were in a bit of a holding pattern for that time.
Yeah, and that meant they had nobody in. So Si came in, brought a lot of change. A lot of people left. Like that's what happens when a church gets a bit stuck, or especially when lots of change happens. And he had now started rebuilding that. He had asked if we would move a couple of years earlier, or a year earlier.
Pretty much like 6 months after he got here, he asked us if we'd move. We were like, no.
He asked again in another curry house. We said no again. And then third time we've come here to visit him and parents, and just things had changed enough in that year. We would still be in Woodford if it was our choice. Now I think we love doing what we were doing, but we sometimes the timing just goes. God just goes, yeah, that's the right thing for you.
And the guy who took over from us, Stuart, in Woodford, he'd been like he started as an intern on the same day that we started as pastors, and he'd grown so much, and it was clear he needed something bigger. But he felt like God was telling him to stay put, and we're like, we know why. So yeah, it was just perfect. God had lined it all up for us.
Yeah, big change, because Gloucester's very different to Dagenham and London, and but we just knew it was right.
Yeah. So obviously, big change, as you say. You moved to Gloucester. It was the right time, the right season for you to move. Relatively young married couple still, and family, I imagine, like most married couples, was something you were dreaming about, aspiring to. Talk us through a bit of that journey, because I know that was a challenging journey, but ultimately a miraculous journey as well. So give some of our people a bit of insight into what God did in and through your lives in that respect.
Yeah, so about 6 months after we moved to Gloucester, we thought, yeah, it'd be great to start a family now, and we feel quite settled. This is a lovely place to live, beautiful to have a family in as well. So we started trying, knowing that I had some issues. I had polycystic ovary syndrome, so it wasn't going to necessarily be easy, but we thought, let's just start trying. And that then started a 6.5 year infertility journey for us. So we went through the process. I tried different medications, none of which worked, and got to the point of the end of what they could do for us until we were eligible to try IVF. In Gloucester at the time, in the county, you had to be 30 before you would be eligible for IVF, and I was only 28, I think, at the time. So then we had this oh, there's nothing more we can do. We've got 2 years to wait until IVF. It was pretty devastating. But we just continued, and we just made the most of what we had, and thought, right, okay, this is obviously an opportunity for us to just press in still, and ministry and different things like that. And then they dropped the age, which was really cool in Gloucester, so we could start IVF a bit earlier. So I think we started, in the end I was 29. Again, it wasn't a straightforward process. I had to have some operations first, and then did our first round of IVF, but that failed. So again, that was pretty devastating. And then
1 sec, mate.
This is one of the stories. Come here, you.
It's good timing.
It is good timing. Come in. So we did the first round of IVF, which failed. Say hey, Danny.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah. Our second round of IVF, we got pregnant and miscarried. We did that quite quickly after the first one, and then this little miracle appeared. Yeah. So are you going back in now?
Hello.
So we had this miscarriage. We were going to wait a year before we tried IVF again, because it's grueling. It is really grueling. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Quickly.
I'm on level 101.
Wow.
On Towercraft.
He's on level 101 on Towercraft,
That
people.
was an achievement.
It's very impressive.
Good job, bud.
So we sort of like, we're gonna wait a year, grueling process of IVF, injections every day and different stuff like that. So then during that time that we were having a break, Simon approached us. Simon had a vision to plant more churches, like a network of churches, different locations. And we'd already planted another 2 locations. And Si was feeling the stretch of being the pastor for One Church Gloucester, as well as overseeing the other locations. So he was going to step up in his role. We were the assistant pastors. He was going to step up and oversee everybody, but needed someone to take over at Gloucester, and asked us if we would be willing to step up and be the pastors of One Church Gloucester, to which, of course, we agreed. We were like, yeah, that's why we're here, so perfect. And in this meeting in late December, early January, we said, I said, you know what's going to happen, don't you? The day we announce we're taking over as location pastors, I'll find out I'm pregnant. And Simon says to me, be careful what you wish for, careful what you say. And I'm like, bring it on. And we didn't know when we were going to announce it, because we started doing the job without the title, and so that it would be a bit of a seamless transition for people. And I think it was the 1st of May, we decided, the church, like the leadership decided, right, okay, we're going to announce it now on our AGM vision night, that you guys are going to be taking over as the location pastors. So that morning I woke up and I just remembered what I'd said. Like, I'd not long come back from visiting you guys in Scotland. Yeah. And I just remembered this conversation that I had with Simon, and we were announcing it that evening, and I had a pregnancy test at home, because you just do when you're trying for babies, like you have lots of tests around. And I thought I'd just do one, just take a test. Didn't feel pregnant, had no reason to think I was pregnant literally whatsoever. And yeah, did this test and just went, well, God, put it down on the side. God, if this is meant to be, like, great. If not, we're going on holiday in a week, and we'll just do IVF in September, and it'll be fine. And there was just no pressure at all. And I came back and I looked at the test, and it negative, never mind. Went to throw it in the bin, and like my inner voice like said to me, just look at that test again. And I looked at it again really closely, and there was this faint line, and yeah, it was positive, just completely miraculously. And that night we announced that we were taking over as location pastors. And then, yeah, little coal anchor Jarvis, who you just saw, was born in January, the 13th of January 2015. Then 9 months, when Cole was 9 months old, I fell pregnant again with our daughter Eliza. She is going to be 4 next week, and she was born the 22nd of July 2016. So there's 18 months between those two, and then we're in this situation of going, well, what are we going to do? Do we want any more children? We obviously can have children now. Never thought we'd be in this situation of going, how many children do we actually want? John's answer was 2. He wanted 2 children. My answer was 3. Yeah. So we ummed and ahed.
She tricked me.
We ummed and ahed about it for quite some time, and then I just got to a point of going, actually, do you know what? 2 is really sensible. Like, yeah, God, I'm totally blessed. They are beautiful children. They've both got fantastic characters, which means they're live wires. They've got great characters, and we're really blessed. They're beautiful children. Yeah, 2 makes sense. They're just like, Eliza was 2 and a bit, just like getting more independent. Perfect. And a week later I found out I was pregnant with our 3rd child. So then we've got Ren, Alana, Joy, Jarvis, and she was 1 in June. So
wow. She's pleasing. This interview might seem a little bit chopped up,
yeah,
because she's awake and this is meant to be a nap time, and Cole's in and out. Eliza's at play school.
Yeah, her last day of play school.
All good. They're all part of the story, but an amazing miracle story. What did you learn in that season of waiting for the miracle? You know, obviously 6.5 year journey, a lot of emotion, a lot of pain within that, I imagine. What would you say to someone who's maybe not waiting necessarily for a baby, but they're waiting for that breakthrough that they're believing for? What did you learn that you would pass on to others?
Yeah, wow. We learned so much. That you're right, the pain was huge. Yeah. And as a husband and as a wife, but as a husband, when the two of you are just crying because you know how you're both feeling the pain. Yeah. And you're out of the options of things you can do other than just pray. So that depth of pain was something that we felt that we'd not felt at any other time. Yeah. And that but the other thing of that, what that does then is, I think you've got two options then, and lots of people, pastoral ministry, there's lots of people really recluse themselves, and it's painful. So you bunker down, minimize put
up your defenses.
That's right, thank you. Yeah. Put up your defenses. We went the complete opposite of that. We had two couples who really helped us through that journey because of their IVF experience. Yeah. But both of them talked about their pain and the journey of that retrospectively, which is hugely helpful to us. As well. But we decided, like, nobody talks about this when they're going through it, and it's because it's so painful. But 1 in 3 couples struggle with infertility. Oh. So we felt we had a unique opportunity to we were definitely going to make ourselves more vulnerable by doing this, but we're just really upfront with the journey. So the church knew that the struggles we were going through. I had my WhatsApp group, my old school friends, most of them aren't married, let alone had kids. And I'm keeping them up to date of the joys of testing and hospital visits and clinics, and we're really purposeful about letting people know how much it hurts, what's involved in the process, and what our hope is in. And really early on, so this was the Sunday after we found out we had the miscarriage during IVF. The preaching schedule is all set. The themes are set. It's me speaking next Sunday on hope. And Si, to his credit, he's a look. I totally get if you don't want to do that. If you don't want to do it, just say. But sometimes you have a unique opportunity to prophesy into something, and speak words of hope into a situation. If you're a pastor, you get the unique opportunity to do that to others. But really, that Sunday, although 500 people heard that, there was only 2 people really that I was speaking to, and I knew I was speaking to myself first and foremost, and spoke on how we have a hope that is an anchor for our soul. Hence the reference of that in our kids' names. And it was so we learned that it's painful. We learned that the vulnerability makes it more painful, but ultimately helps you and helps others. So if this is something you're going through, whatever the waiting period or the pain that you're feeling, if you need to bunker down. But if you have it in you to open up, is no end. Like, the hope it gave us, knowing that we were helping others even, was something. And the other thing it did, it allowed good friends to come alongside us and just be good friends. There's no shortage of people saying nice things, and a small quadrant of people saying stupid things. But it allowed good friends like yourselves and to come alongside and just be good friends and just be encouragers, not over promise, not over prophesy, and not fill you with doubt either, but just be good friends around you. So I think that's what I would encourage people with today.
I'd add 2 real quick things to that. Number 1 is that as much as we were very vulnerable and we were very open, we did have our moments where we just made choices to look after ourselves in that as well. So like things like Mother's Day, Father's Day, days that we found particularly painful, baby dedications, and that we would just give ourselves a little bit of space. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that as well, if you are going to be open with your journey, whatever that is. And the other thing was, as you were talking, Jon, made me think it's given us a very unique revelation on that pain. And that's something that we never want to minimize, and we always want to address. So things like Mother's Day, Father's Day, we want to talk about that. We want to acknowledge people in the room that are feeling that, not just ignore it, not just smooth over, but acknowledge them, and say, we're with you, we love you, stand with you. And not just people that are having trouble conceiving, but people that have maybe lost a child, who have are separated from their children, who have lost their parents, lots of different elements there. But we always want to address it rather than ignore it.
Yeah. We just wrapped this story up with this section up with the story of announcing we were pregnant. And it is such a beautiful moment at the end of that. So to be able to stand at the front, and I was speaking, and at the end part of the message, I said, Louise is going to come and join me for this part. And we retold part of our story that we'd often told. And you could tell people going like, we're still with you. We know this story though, Jon and Louise, but we are still with you. And then the punchline from the story was, we just wanted to show you this. And we put the scan photo on screen. And the room erupted. Everyone stood to their feet. There was cheering. I'm welling up now, remember it. There was tears. And then like anyone that's had a pregnancy, you start letting people know, and you say, but don't tell anybody. You are now in the circle of trust of this. So we had to say to everybody in the first service, because
we had 2 services to do.
Now, you're now in the giant circle of trust. Don't tell anybody coming in for service 2.
You'll ruin it. You'll ruin it.
Don't ruin the surprise. So there's all these people going out into the car park, seeing people coming in, going like, "Oh, you're gonna love it today." Mascara and eyeliner like streaming down people's faces. And
I had a friend as well tell me that she listened to it on podcast.
Yeah.
She's like, I was on the tube. You should have a warning on that to say you will cry.
Yeah, but if people journey with you, everyone gets to celebrate. So,
and that's what you guys absolutely did. It was a privilege for us as your friends just to stand with you and pray with you through that season. But you very much did what you've just described. You journeyed with people. You invited people appropriately into the struggle that you were going through. And a little bit like Samson, that struggle with the lion, he found something sweet that was a benefit for others. That's very much what you modelled through that season. And it's just powerful. And I'm sure people listening right now are encouraged by your resilience and your commitment to faith, even through those dark days. And we rejoice with you on the other side with your 3 beautiful kids now, Cole, Eliza, and Ren. And it's been a privilege to be part of your journey from the beginning, but very much watching you go through that season of pain that was a blessing to other people even through it. So well done. And we're proud of you. But hey, let's just journey on a little bit into your current role as pastors of One Church Gloucester. So you've been doing that now for quite a few years, 6, 7 years, is it?
Yeah, 6, I think. Yeah,
6.5 years.
So pastoring the church in Gloucester. Let's just ask a big, broad question, and you can take it wherever it goes. What's the number 1 lesson you have learned leading local church in that time that you would want to pass on to other people?
Wow.
Okay. We'll do one each.
Okay, yeah. Go for it.
Do you have one?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
You have this one.
Thanks. I think it's a very personal one for me, is that leadership isn't a title. And I think for the person, we lead together, we both feel called. It's a calling, and we both feel called to that. But Jon has the job. He's the guy that gets paid. He's the guy that's at church every day. He's has the status in terms of ministerial status. And if you do not feel called, then you won't make it through that. Because I think for me, I've had to learn that it's God who validates me. It's not man. A title doesn't give me any kind of credibility, but I have to work hard for that, and I have to just prove myself in God's eyes, not man's, and just know who I am. Because if I don't know who I am, then I'm not going to be able to outwork what He's called me to do. So I think that for me is a massive one. Not having that paid position means you're just a little bit on the back foot. You get the comments, "Oh, you're a lovely pastor's wife, Louise." Knowing that I'm called, knowing that it's me in it too, you have to just go, right, it's God. It's about you, God. And I have to lead with integrity through all of that.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, my one bit, you gave us a little bit of warning over that question, so give us a chance to try and think about it. And mine came from my dad wrote down his memoirs. So my dad passed away last year, And a couple of years before that, he'd spent a lot of time just kind of writing a bit of an autobiography, not for anybody else's eyes, other than just the family. And one of the big things that came out of that was how being in ministry is a calling.
Yeah,
it's non-negotiable. You're called, you do it, and and that's you give your life to it. But being in ministry with friends is a privilege.
Yeah,
and we'll have friends who God has sent them or called them to places, and it can be really, really lonely. And I do really see that in leadership, building good friendships is essential. Yeah. And stories of my dad's of being he had this Spanish mission team that he'd go on, to the Costa del Sol. It must be really tough.
It's hardly Calcutta, is it?
No, exactly. And youth camps and things like that he would just do with his friends. Conference would be a time where he'd just have a lot of fun with friends. And I really took that to heart and realized, we'll always be, as far as I'm aware, we'll always be in ministry until God retires us or steps us down. But you get to choose to do that with friends, and you have to actively work on that. Yeah. So you and I did Young Lions together for a decade or whatever. Yeah. And that's effort, meetings are around the country and the time investment into that. But
always over Danny's birthday.
I grew up over 10 years at Young Lions.
But that was worth it because of the people that I was going to be in the room with to do that. And in our local context as well, we've worked really hard to do that in the churches that we've been in. Spend time investing into friends. With even our leadership team that we have here, one of the key criteria for us before quality was definitely going to be chemistry. Yeah. Do we have the chemistry with people? Because if we don't want to hang out with these people, we've got a leadership team meeting this afternoon. If we don't want to just hang out with those people, then those meetings are rubbish. And then it can become a chore. So that investment into building good friendships with people takes it from just the honor of being called to ministry into privilege of getting to do that with friends.
Yeah.
So good. Very, very good. This season's obviously been slightly interesting for all of us leading churches. Lockdown for, what is it now, 120 odd days or something we're currently in. Starting to ease now, but obviously still very, very different in terms of how we outwork ministry and how we do certainly gathered church. What again, just asking a big broad question, what is the thing or things you've learned in lockdown or things you've been developed in that you really want to retain and preserve from this season? Because I think we've all been going through a season of self-reflection and evaluation. What are the things that you want to make sure that as we start to now return to some semblance of normality, we don't just learn and leave behind, but we actually carry it with us into the new era that we're entering together? What have you been learning?
Yeah, loads. We were chatting about all this stuff before we hit record, and it's unending what the things you can learn. Obviously, I think every church has learned that they can do something online, however big or small it can be done. Yeah. And I would hope that every church is thinking about how they maintain that. I forget what the stats are now, but it was something as high as, wasn't it like something like 24% of people in the UK have attended an online religious service during lockdown, and half of those, or nearly half of those, had never been to church, never stepped foot in a church building before in their life, and now they have through an online space. So we have to keep doing this. So when our buildings reopen and we start meeting on a Sunday, we have to stay online. The new people, we've seen probably something like 15 to 20 new people join an online new people's group. We've never met face to face. That purely exists in a Facebook group, and we can't wait to meet them. So that we have to stay for that, as well as people that left our church a long time ago for all sorts of different reasons. They've rejoined us through doing it online. We must stay online.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think, not every meeting doesn't have to be face to face. So Zoom has been fantastic just to be able to connect people, especially in terms of what we call small groups, is grow groups, for those parents that are either single parents or guys that come alternate because of the kids. They can actually just connect and be in that group via Zoom, which is excellent. Even that, you know, being at home with the kids in bed. So that's been a massive win to get more people connected in. And I think, like, on a personal note, in terms of just our family dynamic, I think we've worked harder at that. Jon's working from home, so like we've been more flexible, which I wouldn't want to lose that as well. I think that's been a massive turning point for us as well.
Yeah, and the one that I think we're learning, I wouldn't say that we've, you know, this is the one I think that's going to see us ultimately determine whether this whole season is a success or not, is going to be like we realize we probably rely really heavily we rely so much on the Sunday being the starting point. So gather everybody on a Sunday and just think about all the stuff that you want to announce and tell people about and connect people to, that you rely on a Sunday to do that in. And now, it was 3 or 4 months now of not having that, and that's unlikely to change a great deal in the near future. So we can't rely on the Sunday gathering being the starting point upon which everybody's discipleship branches off from. And I think we're going to see a shift to people meeting in much smaller groups, informally, as people intentionally grow relationships, and through stuff that we're able to structure a bit like groups and courses. I think we're going to see the success is going to be whether the church can thrive in bite-sized chunks, and meeting together as a church will become that will become a secondary to that. That will make or break us. I think that transition, as we start to emerge into this next window.
Yeah.
Well, guys, before you go, what are some of the things that we as a church could be praying for you over, both individually as a family and as a church family as well? What could our people just cover you in prayer with at this time?
That's a very good question.
I'm like Paxman, of course.
I wasn't prepared for that one. I think like we are feeling the effects of lockdown like everybody else, like just fatigue, tiredness, and that compounded with the fact of going, yay, 6 weeks holidays, the kids are all home. So yeah, I think just a bit of that we're able to like get some kind of rest, I think, over the next 6 weeks would be good.
Yeah, that's good, definitely. And for us as a church, we are lots of young families, and not just One Church Gloucester, but each, in fact, the 4 locations we have in the UK are each led by couples with kids under 5. And anybody that's watching this with kids is nodding, like
watching it with kids because you can't actually hear anything.
So just that extra, how we not just lead ourselves, but we've got lots of families that we want to try and lead well, and they're carrying weight and responsibility. So we'd love some wisdom on that. For sure.
Very good. Well, let me pray for you right now, and I'm sure all the people watching online at home will join me in praying for you as well. But Father God, I thank you for Jon. I thank you for Louise, Lord. I thank you for the call of God that's upon their lives. I thank you that you have positioned them to lead One Church in Gloucester for such a time as this. And Lord, I do really pray that that church will live up to its name, that it would be one church, that it would be a church of unity and togetherness, especially in this season where people are scattered and disconnected physically. Lord, I pray that spiritually there will be greater unity in that church than ever before. I pray that you would grace Jon and Louise with the wisdom and discernment and insight they need to lead and shepherd your people well through this uncertain time. Lord, I do pray for that sense of rest that Louise touched on. I pray that them personally would be refreshed. Your word says that those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. And I pray right now for supernatural energy to surge through their very beings, that, Lord, you would sustain them, you would grace them for the race that you have called them to run, that, Lord, as a family, weariness would subside, and energy and fresh vision and fresh focus would rise and emerge within them. Lord, I pray for those families that Jon touched on, Lord, for those young families that are just Lord, even almost just struggling to survive this season. Lord, I pray for a special grace upon them. I pray for mums who have been homeschooling and dads that have been homeschooling and carers that have been homeschooling. Lord, again, to just sense the refreshing of your Holy Spirit at this time. And Lord, whatever the church looks like in the coming months, Lord, I do pray that you would just give Jon and Louise and the wider team the insight to know what to do and when to do it, how to disciple people, how to galvanize your people for mission, how to worship you in these uncertain days and be a testimony, living sacrifices of your grace and your goodness in that community and beyond. So, Lord, I thank you for them. I pray an abundance of your blessing over them. In Jesus' precious and powerful name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Hopefully, we'll see you here in Bedworth one day soon, post-lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Bless
too.
you guys. We love what you're doing and the journey of Life Church and this current season of it. It's good to see you guys thriving in it as well. Well done, everyone.
Take care, guys. See you soon.
Bye.
Well, really do hope you've been blessed, inspired and encouraged by hearing what you've heard tonight. Jon and Louise, thank you so much for being with us. If you've got something from it as you've been watching, why not drop a little comment on the comment section right now and just show your appreciation to Jon and Louise for being with us this evening. Maybe God's spoken to you. Maybe as you've heard some of their story, maybe as you've heard some of the struggle that they went through and the period of pain that they had to endure, and maybe you're going through something similar that's unseen, it's unknown to many people around you. I would encourage you, just like Jon and Louise have shared tonight, you need people around you. It's not necessarily wise to share everything that you're going through with everyone, but everyone needs someone. And I believe that we are created and designed for relationship. We sometimes need people around us to just lift up our arms and cover us in prayer and just stand with us as we go through some of the trials and some of the difficulties of life. And I would encourage you, if that's you this evening, you're going through something that is a real challenge and a real stretch for your faith, why not get in touch with us here? We would love to stand with you as a church leadership team. We would love to pray for you, and we'd love to offer you some practical support where we can, if need be, as well. Church, remember, there's loads happening through the week. Life groups are still largely happening over the summer, so if you're part of a life group, get in touch with your life group leader and just make sure you check in with them and see what you can be part of as the summer weeks now unfold before us. Also, remember this weekend we're holding our first ever watch party. An initial 30 people will be allowed into the church building to watch our online service on the big screen. Remember, priority will be given to those who have been most socially isolated during the period of lockdown. So don't be offended if you don't make it this week. We are hoping to offer more opportunities and indeed incrementally increase the capacity where we can as well. But if you're interested in being part of that watch party, email us at office@lifechurch.eu and we'll let you know if it's going to be possible for you to participate in that this weekend. Church, we love you. Stay safe. Hope to see you in person very, very soon. God bless you.